The Africonomie Summit 2014, the Nigerian Sovereign and Pensions Forum, focused on the growth and development of the Nigerian economy. In his opening remarks, Mr. Ayuli Jemide, the lead partner for Detail Solicitors, welcomed the participants and also shared his insight on what the conference presents.
So dear participants, it's a great privilege and pleasure to welcome you to this conference led by Africonomie, which promises to be stimulating and rewarding. This event, auspiciously held in Lagos, Nigeria, and centered on repositioning indigenous investment funds for private capital investment, is being organized at a very opportune time. I see opportunities emanating from Nigeria and indeed the rest of Africa in the next decade. And this conference has the potential to crystallize new information frontiers and pivotal networks in the years to come.
In a special panel session looking at the private capital engagement in the Nigerian sector, Mr. Okoyemi Agbaje, CEO of RCC Financial Services, gave further insight on the demography of the nation, which is a plus or could be a potential risk for the nation.
Demographic dividend. Well, my qualification is that it could easily be a dividend, a benefit. It could easily as well be a burden. It could be like China since 1978, or it could easily be like China under Mao Zedong and many dead people, many wars, many conflicts, instability, and all of that. So it depends. It's an opportunity, depending on what you do with it, but it could also be a major reason for catastrophe.
What are the trends happening in Nigeria with regards to private equity or private capital participation in the education sector?
Nigeria, maybe to a lesser extent than East Africa, but certainly mirrors the same positive trend in southern Nigeria. So you have about 30, 40 private universities licensed in the last decade or so, maybe only 2 in northern Nigeria. And even those 2 in the more cosmopolitan or more heterogeneous parts of northern Nigeria. Abuja, if you call that northern Nigeria, and maybe Kaduna or somewhere. But all of those private universities are in some of them. Some states have 10 of them, Ogun State, which is next to Lagos, for obvious reasons. Osun State, Anambra State. Those are well. So again, we have that regional exclusion from private education. At the primary and secondary levels, it's phenomenal. It's essentially the private sector that has rescued education in Nigeria in the last 2 decades. Now, I totally agree with the original premise. The defining factor that will determine whether population, youth demographics is a benefit or it's a burden will be education.
He also shared his insight on socioeconomic issues.
In terms of GDP and relevant statistics, I'm on record numerous times. I think you can't do without GDP. However, for me, the most relevant statistic to Nigeria today, given the scale and the dangers involved in our social context, is to focus on human development indices, to focus on education, to focus on literacy, quality, health services, to focus on employment. Indeed, I've defined publicly in my column what I think the central objectives of macroeconomic policy in Nigeria should be for the next decade. And I have absolutely no doubt that it should be tackling unemployment, dealing with skills and competencies, embarking on a Marshall Plan to provide education to the vast number of Nigerians who don't have it, dealing with transportation at public transportation so that the cost of transportation for goods and for human beings can go down. Those are the central, for me, and of course GDP per capita. So it's not just the size of GDP, but what's GDP per capita?
To give further insight on the relevance of an effective economy and further insight on the future of the Nigerian economic outlook, Mr. Ayuli Jemide and Mr. Kwemi Agbaje also gave their thoughts about the future.
GDP rebasing should not be a controversy at all. It's a common sense measure. It was something we needed to do. When you want to measure any index at all, whether it's stocks or prices, inflation or GDP, you must start from a base year. And that base year, you collect full statistics so that you can establish a template and define the template with which you'll be measuring going forward. Of course, it's common sense that the longer your base year is from reality, from the current period, the less accurate your measurement of your index, whichever index is. So and that's why people rebase after a period of time. And we're aware that the global convention is to rebase every 5 years. We also know that some countries build rebasing into their GDP measurement every year. So there's absolutely, for me, we shouldn't have a fruitless, unfruitful debate over GDP rebasing.
The informal sector, really doesn't factor into our economic statistics in Nigeria. There's a lot going on, from the mechanics to the tailors to people, street hawking, those people who are typically untaxed, unbanked, and just not in the radar, right? But they're doing a lot of business, right? So when you talk about GDP and those people are excluded, then, obviously your GDP is understated, Beyond that, there are even aspects of the formal sector that may not be fully on the radar. Take your small-time law firms or small-time accountants or other people in the service industries, who you can't really say how much they earn because they're not obliged by law to publish their accounts. And if they do business with other people who don't publish their accounts and don't show how much they spend on legal services, then where do you get the data from on those transactions?